Hello, I'm Dr. Brian Fraser, and in this video, I'll be introducing Android Studio and how to create a very simple first project. So I've installed Android Studio, and now I'm going to start by launching it. So I come up with a window, and the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new project. So I'll take a new project here. It'll ask me what kind of project I want to do. I'm going to go down and I'm going to select here an empty activity on the left, just to keep it really simple to start with. There's a number of other templates we can use as we go forward. I'm going to give my project a name. I'm going to call this one First Project Demo. And then I can give it a package name. So you might want to give this one something that is related to if you got a domain or something like that, or a school. So I can put in here maybe ca.university.firstprojectdemo or something like that. It doesn't really matter what you put in here, as long as you don't put in like ibm.com or something that someone else is going to be using. It only matters really when you start to publish it on the Android Play Store, and that's how they identify your application. Where do you want to save it? I'm putting it in my temp folder. You get to pick which language you want to use, either Java or Kotlin. Kotlin is a new language that's been invented or brought up to kind of replace Java for Android development. It's faster to write, less code to write, but not as common in some cases. It's more common now for Android, but Java is, of course, very common in the industry. So I'm going to stick with Java. And then I get to pick my minimum SDK that is going to be supported. I'm going with the default one that's provided is often a reasonable choice. If you set this to a high level, you get a bunch more features you can use, but older phones can't run your application. This is saying how old a phone is going to let this run on. So I'm going to leave it as default. That sounds good. I'll click Finish, and it's going to go ahead and make their project. So now what I want to do is go through this and, well, I'll get rid of the tip of the day, sure. It's right now trying to build my project. We can see the bottom corner, it says, running a bunch of build processes and so forth, and it's going through building the project. It says scripts found. Okay, I'll close that. On the left-hand side, it's showing me different parts of the application that it's created. It's built me a main activity to start with, and it's put in some standard template code here. If I go over across to main activity main XML, this will actually show me what my interface is going to look like. So let me stretch this out a little bit, and then I'm going to zoom in. And it's showing me this is what it's going to show me on the screen when it runs. Currently, it's just a box that says Hello World. So maybe that's good enough to start with, right? Let's see this run and prove it's going to work. So I'm going to go up to Run and then Run App. And it's thinking away. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner, it says Gradle Build Running. It's launched my emulator, which I've already got defined, and I'll show you how to define an emulator in just a moment. And then my project's up, and it's running. Now, this is actually not just a screen that it's showing me. This is the actual emulator that is running and showing us through Android Studio. So if I go back, for example, this is an actual instance. I could browse the web. I could send fake test messages. I could see what's installed on my phone. So it's actually a kind of a phone running inside of this. It's my emulator. Okay, so let's see how do we set up this emulator. If I go up to Tools and then down to SDK Manager, this will be the first thing we want to look at. We get to pick what SDK, that is the software development kit, Android software development kit, we wish to install. Now at the moment I have API 32 installed. What you exactly install doesn't make a huge difference as long as it's some of the newer things. Kind of, I'd go, the last 3 or 4 different versions that have been released. I'd probably stay away from the very newest ones as well. So once you've clicked on that and then click OK, it'll download all of that, maybe like 500 megs or something, and it'll put it into your folders. So once I've got that installed, I'll cancel that because it's installed already. If I go to Tools and then Device Manager, this will talk about configuring that device on the right-hand side. Now it pops up a little window here. Let me close these ones here to kind of show us what I got. This is all part of the right panel. As it turns out, I've got a number of different devices already configured and running, but you can create your own. So you can go Create Device and then describe it. You can pick what kind of device you want to be testing on. It's a good idea to have a couple of these configured for different kind of test scenarios, maybe on a tablet, a small phone, these kind of things. So you can pick which one you want. I often go with the Pixel 2 because it's relatively recent and very standard. So I'll say that. And then you can pick which version of it do you want to run. And I've currently got R downloaded, which is API 30, but anything recent would be fine to work with. Click Next. You can name it whatever you want. so the default name is probably fine. Mine's got a 2 because I've got other ones. And you can configure some of the other resources if you want, but it's probably fine. Once you click Finish, it'll go through and build you your device. So I'm going to close that a little bit there because I've already got one running. That's all we need. All right, so I'll leave that going. Let's get back to trying to customize our application. So if I look on the left-hand side, two things we're interested in at the moment. Under Java, and then under my package that I had here to start with, I've got main activity. And that'll show us the Java code that we'll come back to in a bit. But let's go and edit what it's going to look like first. To edit the actual layout, that's under the resource folder, res. So go res, and then under here, I want to go layout, and here's this activity main. These two are tied together by, and I'll show you this in a second here. When it first comes up, it says I'm going to set the content view. Basically, what do I want to show? It loads this layout from r.layout.activityMain. Well, activityMain is the name of my XML file. We'll come back to the r.activity in a minute, or r.layout. All right, so I'm going to go on the left-hand side. I'm going to click on Project to hide the project window on the very left to give myself a little bit more screen space to play with. And now we've got all these sort of what we want to put on our activity. I'm going to drop in a button. So on the left-hand side, I'm under Common at the moment, button, but you can go through and pick any of these different elements that are possible. So let's bring on a button. I'm going to drop it in, and let's put it right below here. Now at the moment, I can drag it around the screen, and I can put it wherever I really want. One problem, though, is when I run this, and this is kind of the funny part to start with, I'm going to run the application. This button isn't going to end up right here. Okay, so it's asking me, do you want to terminate the app that is already running? I'm going to say terminate. In fact, I'm going to say don't do this, don't ask again. Always terminate and rerun my app whenever I say to do so. So my app runs on the right-hand side. We can see that it adds in the title at the top. That's all right. But my button snuck up to the top. Well, why did it do that? Well, it's using what's called a constraint layout. We can see it says up here constraint layout at the moment. And when I click on my button doesn't have any constraints set. So I can drag from these circles to different areas on the screen to basically set up the constraints. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to drag it to here. You can see I dragged it there. We pull it down and just show us here. This arrow says that we want 96 units between my button and the bottom of Hello World. So we've set up a constraint. I'm going to set up another constraint right and left. So I drag it over to the right side of the screen, and I can drag it to the left side of the screen. And it's going to set up constraints, and it's going to split it between the two of them, evenly making it go there. So now if I run my application, we're going to see that the button appears approximately where I wanted it. So that's if your layout kind of goes funny, that's what's happening. Let me show you this with put another button in. There's another trick you can use. So if I put this in, and let's say I wanted to put this above, but I forgot to actually tie it down to anything. By clicking this button here, Toggle Tool Visibility and Position, it basically turns off the tooling layout, which is helping you draw it, and it says, what would this look like in reality? Oh, okay, in reality it's going way up there. So that gives you a hint as to what's going to happen. I'll click that again and get rid of it, delete. All right, so now we've got our button on here. We know how to edit it. Let's have a look at what this actually is doing behind the scenes. So at the moment, this is showing me a graphical view of the editor I'm designing. And we can see in the top right-hand corner, different views of the same thing. I'm going to click on the code. This code, it's XML, which is the extended markup language. It is describing this UI that we've got. So we've got a text view. That's the Hello World one. In fact, we can tell it's the Hello World one because it says so right here. It sets the text to be Hello World. And then we put in a button, and this is the button that we added. So there's this is really what you're creating, and then the editor is basically showing it to you in a graphical format to help you design a better screen. And we'll come back and look at what we can do with this. All right, so we've added the button. Let's go ahead and change the name. So I could change the name of my button here, and I can actually edit it inside of my document. I'll do that to start with. This is where the name goes. Name goes. Not particularly nicely named button. Again, this on the right is my editor, my running program, so that's not showing me that. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to go split, and it'll show me both. And there we can see that as I edited it, it changed it here. I do most of my work in the design view, where I just look at the design and say, okay, what's it going to look like? So let's change this to be something like Click Me. So on the right-hand side, what have we got? At the top, we can give it an ID. We'll leave button for now. The layout describes all of my constraints that I have added, and I can remove them by clicking on the X here on the circle. and that will remove the constraint that maybe I've added from before. And then I can do something else. I'll leave it like that. We'll put it to the right-hand side. I'll edit the height here, and I get very specific control over how I want this to look. As I scroll down, it'll show me some of the other possible things about how the content looks inside of it, rotations, and so on. What I really want to do, this is under Common Attributes, I want to change the text. Here it is, text. Let's say click me. Click me with an exclamation mark. All right, I'm going to run that. When you're developing the software, it's good to do it in little spurts. Make a little change and then run it and see if it works. That looks good so far. Now, of course, what happens when I click me? Nothing, because we haven't yet decided what it's going to do. To make it sing and dance and do things, I need to go back to my Java code. I've got it loaded, but I'll show you again where it is. On the left-hand side under Java, my package name, and then main activity. So go back into here. What do I want to do? Well, I'm going to put in a, let's put in a, oops, that's not what I wanted. First thing I want to do is I want to find the button. And then I'm going to set its behavior, set button behavior. So first, to find the button, I'm going to say find view by ID, and it comes up with a suggestion, so I'll hit enter to select it. And now I need to give it the tooltip here. It says I need the resource ID, an integer. Well, all of these are going to be inside of a class called R. R is the resource file, and this is what is compiled for us. Everything that's in our XML files is generated into here. So I'm going to R dot, and then I can pick an item here. And in fact, I'm going to go R.ID dot, and it'll show me all of the things in here. Well, I want my button. Now, button's not a great name. Let me just go to button to first off. So R.ID.button. Let's go back and change that. I'm going to go back into here, go back to my button, up to the top, and I'm going to change this to be button click me. BTN click me. Now, when I go to change this, it's smart enough to say, well, hey, there's other things that reference this. Do you want to rename those things as well? I probably do. And so I'm going to do this refactoring. It's a smart refactoring. Let's see what it did. So to start with, let's look at our code in here. We can see that the name, button, the Android ID is now button BTN click me. Note that there's this plus ID here. This is telling the compiler, the resource compiler, that this is going to create a new thing, and it's going to create this ID. We can look down here as well, and we can see, let's look at our constraints. Here we go, some of our constraints. And this is saying, well, here we have a constraint to this other thing, this text view. Well, what is text view? Text view is up here. We created a text view, and we're going to set up a constraint between them, and that's its name. So let's go back to our code and have a look at what's happening. We can see here that it's already switched to be click me. I'm going to put a semicolon in. Now this is going to give me back the element. This is going to find the view. So what I want to do is I want to hold that with a button. So I can say button btn equals, and this will then hold it. I haven't yet imported this. The import list is up here. It doesn't know which button I want, so if I click on it and I hold Alt-Enter, it gives me a bunch of quick fixes. The one I want to select here is Import Class, and it'll figure out what to do, and we can see that it imported that already for me. So that's an easy fix. So I'm going to grab that. Now note, in some older tutorials, people will they'll cast the return of this button. You don't actually need to do that anymore. Android Studio became smarter and now holds it. We see this is grayed out. We're not yet using this variable. It's never used, so let's go ahead and use it. I'm going to say btn dot, and I'm going to set up what's called a click listener. And in fact, it's the suggested here one because it's the most common. I'm going to set an on-click listener. And now I need to give it an on-click listener. The way I do this is a few ways. I'm going to do it the longer way now that kind of explains what's going on. I say view, using the view class, view.onClickListener. That's the first one that comes up, onClickListener. This is an interface. So I'm going to say it's a new view.onClickListener, and I'm going to hold Alt-Enter on this, like that. There we go. So this is an interface, and so I'm going to hit Alt-Enter on it, and I can say Implement Methods, and it'll automatically fill in the methods I need to implement. Here's a suggestion. It thinks I need to implement the onClick method, which is absolutely right. So I'll do that here. So if I look at this, I'm going to Control-click on that, double click it, and it'll try and load the file. And it'll now tell me, here is this interface. It's a public interface called OnClickListener. And then we describe it, well, it just has an onClick method. So that's cool. We go back in here. I'm now overriding this method, and I can do whatever I want in here. So to start with, I'm just going to put a log message out. It's a nice way to see what's going on. So I can say log.I for info. And then what do I need? I can hit Control space. It wants to put in a tag as the next thing. Control P, I think, will tell me. No. Oh, anyway. So I need to give it a tag, and so I'm going to put in a string and just say my first app. We'll come back to that in a minute. And then I'm going to give it a message. You clicked it. Yay. And we're happy. Again, log is not found. Alt-Enter, quick fix. It automatically imported it for me. So let's try this out. I'm going to go to Run. Now this is Shift F10, so I'll just start doing Shift F10 to do it faster. Activity loads up. I'm going to hit log this, and nothing seems to be happening. Well, let's find the log. That's a great thing to look at. The log is really important for debugging and working with our application. So down at the bottom here, where is my Android log? My log is coming up in this log cat. So if I open that log cat, I can then specify what I want to do. So I can pick an emulator that I'm running, or a real phone. You can do this all on a real phone. I'm going to restrict it to looking at only messages from this first project. And verbose, it's going to show me everything that applies. I'm going to right click here, and we can see that there's a lot of messages that have happened. And we can see some of these messages that I was kicking out. So let's watch it. I'm going to click me again, and we can see some new messages popping up. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to right click, clear the log, and see the messages come up. So this is quite handy if you want to see what's going on in your application as it's running. Also, if something goes wrong, you'll see it pop up in here. Let me with something that, if messages or your program crashes, check out the log cat. It's a great place to go. All right, so we got the log in there. Next, let's look at something we can do that actually makes a change on the screen. So I'm going to put up a toast. A toast is a little box that pops up with a message. So this is in toast is a class. Toast dot, and then we're going to use one of these static factory methods called make text. I'm going to make text. We can see here, I need to give it a context. A lot of things that you do with Android, you need to provide a context to what's going on or what you're working with. So my context here is going to be with my activity. I'm going to get rid of this log cat there. The context is going to be in this main activity. I'm going to say this, but if I just said this, in fact, I'm inside of a instance here of my View.OnClickListener. And so that's going to be, this refers to this view listener. That's not what I want. I want to say, well, I want the surrounding one. So it's going to be main activity dot this. And then I'm going to provide a message. Something like, yay, good work. Now, if I just put a semicolon here, it's actually not going to do really what I want yet. Oh, sorry, I need one other thing. There you go. I need to also provide in the how long I want this message to be up for. So that's going to be, I just say toast dot, and then I need to give it a length. I can give it a length of long or short. Let's do short because it's only going to be up for a moment. It's a nice short message. If I just did this, in fact, nothing's going to show up. What I also need to do is I need to say dot show. So this previous one gives me an object, a toast object, and then on the toast object, I'm going to call dot show. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it down to the next line just to kind of make it clear that we're calling dot show on it. So I'm going to go Shift F10, rerun it. Click me, and boom! Yay, good work! Isn't that nice? We've actually got some nice immediate feedback. Toast messages are great for that because you can say, well, this isn't doing what I wanted it to do. What is going on? This will help you with that, tracking that through. Now, one final thing is you often have a lot of log messages in your program. It's kind of annoying to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. What we're going to do is we're going to put this, I'm going to extract this. I'm going to right click and then say refactor and then extract. Let me pull this up a bit. Right click, refactor, oops, and then extract constant, introduce constant. And I give it a name. I'm going to call this one tag. Pick the expression. Yeah, I want to make this. And then I'm going to name it tag. I'll hit enter, and we'll see up here at the top, it has now created a public static final string called tag. In fact, I want to make it private. Keep everything private by default. And now if I've got multiple log messages, I will always use the tag here. And if I copy this to a new activity, maybe I can have that new activity, then just use the tag by default. So that's sort of a common thing you're going to see in most activities. All right. And that is enough for the moment. Let me just rerun that, prove it still works. Have a look at the other videos in this series that'll show you how to do more complex layouts, do more interesting things, and then designing your application and laying out how the code structure goes to make your activity nice and manageable. This Java file can get really unmanageable quickly, so you need to have some structure into how you put things together. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.